Hey, welcome everybody. I just want to let you know the congressman is on his way. He's going to be in very, very shortly. So if you're waiting, he's going to just hold tight just a few more minutes and he'll be here. So welcome everyone. So the congressman is here and he's just getting settled now outside. And so I'm going to do my introduction now. That way he can come right in afterwards. So for those who I don't know, my name is Rabbi Mark Katz. I'm the rabbi here at Temple Ner Tamid. If you're joining us virtually, I want to welcome you. I want to give a special thank you to Shirley Colbert, who sponsored tonight, and to her whole family. A couple other thank yous to Carrie Shavat, who really makes this Temple Talk series happen, and through his friendships with so many elected officials is able to bring them. And to Josh Weston, who is the first one to introduce me ever to the congressman, to Josh Gottheimer, a friend of his, and so welcome. I am pleased about tonight. You may or may not remember, if you were here about a year ago, that we had the congressman come to the congregation. And it was a really profound, wonderful experience. He came and spoke about what bipartisanship meant, what it meant to make compromises, what it meant to be part of this Problem Solvers Caucus that he's a part of. And so tonight he's back, and although his outlook hasn't changed, the world has changed significantly since he was here last. And so it's my pleasure not only to welcome him, but to welcome Jamie Bedrin, an award-winning journalist, a member of our congregation, really thoughtful leader in our community, tireless advocate for justice, as well as a professor at Montclair State University. And so I want to welcome her and Representative Gottheimer to the stage now.
This is just from your staff ordered an audio recording. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Another rainy evening in New Jersey.
It's been a lot of rain this month.
A lot. So I think I read something funny or fun about you. I just wanted to start off with a real light intro. I think we were born in the same hospital.
And Barnabas?
Of course.
Nice.
Yes. You're a little bit.
I was there last week.
I know.
2 weeks ago.
With Adrienne Phillips.
That's exactly.
I went to high school with her.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't remember the room.
That you were born. Do you, Mom, remember what room I was born in? No. You're a little old, just a little bit older, but.
Had to say that, huh?
I'm sorry. Not that much, actually. And I think we have kids around the same age. So.
How old are your kids?
10 and a half and 15.
Okay, so I have 12 and about to be 15.
Okay, so yeah, similar.
Boys or girls?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys. Well,
Yeah.
my older's a girl.
I know, I did my homework. So also, before we get started, listen, I've got a list of people that made sure, who wanted to make sure I said hello. Ready? Greg Kahn from UPenn, he's actually here. Sarah and Todd Larson send their love, and they're very sorry they're not here. They actually just texted me a picture of your book that's on their shelf.
That's great. We went to law school together.
I know you did.
I know.
Yeah.
Great people.
Wonderful, wonderful people. This sounds very loud. Is it me or is it just, it's good? Okay, thanks. Okay. Also my neighbors, Kelly and James Atkins.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think Kelly and your sister may have gone to high school together.
That's right.
So
That's really funny.
I know. Everybody was like all day, nonstop.
And
No,
my cousin lives in Montclair.
your cousin lives in Montclair.
Yes. Jamie Sequel. Jamie Weinstein. If anybody plays pickleball, she's fierce.
Oh, I know who, yes, I know who that is.
Yes, see?
Yeah, yeah.
It's all about the pickleball.
All pickle ball all the time. So I wanted to ask you a question about, it's good, we should laugh, we should have fun, right?
We need some smiles these days. We need a little joy.
So many smiles. Actually, what I'm gonna say is a little sad, but I wanted to ask you about Joe Lieberman, because he passed away. And as it turns out, the other night, my husband was explaining the popular vote and the Electoral College to my kids. And then we started talking about the 2000 election. I happened to be in journalism school that year. And when Al Gore, when he lost, he ended up coming to Columbia to teach. But And then the next day, I saw that, that Lieberman died, and I was wondering, have you ever met him? Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
Yes, I knew him actually quite well. Spoke to him recently. A real mensch of a guy, and of blessed memory. I can't believe. Can you hear me now? I was trying not to be echoey. I was saying that I knew Senator Lieberman very well, and as a young Jewish man who worked in political life, I looked up to him a lot. Especially, I was involved in the 2000 election. I worked at the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights right after the election, and helped investigate the voting irregularities in Florida. So I was very involved in that.
We actually were
Supreme
talking
Court debacle.
about that with the kids. We didn't get into the hanging chads, but it was a lot to explain to them. I mean,
it's hard to believe that, it's a huge part of American history, and it's not talked about that much. I was explaining it to my kids recently as well, of what happened in 2000. And I'll never forget, I was working for President Clinton as a speechwriter
Right.
the night of the election, and we were each assigned to write, I was assigned, I think, to write the speech if Al Gore won. Another colleague of mine was assigned if Al Gore lost. Al Gore and Lieberman lost or won. And we did not prepare for a third outcome, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, it was very late. And it was the same night that Senator Clinton got elected. And I was helping her as well in her campaign for Senate.
I forgot about that.
And she, so we were at the hotel, and it was, I don't remember when this all went down, but it was very late at night, if you remember. And because he first went out and then decided not to go out, and Al Gore, and then President Clinton came in, we were the writing team, and said to us, okay, well, we have to come up with a third speech, because I got to give a third speech first thing in the morning. And so we were talking about what we were going to say. So a bunch of us were up all night trying to figure this out, because how to talk about this, because it wasn't something that any of us prepared for.
It's crazy. I actually, as a journalism student, I went to cover Corzine that night, and I think I was in New Brunswick. I want to say we were near Rutgers, and I grew up in New Jersey. I had my car. I drove from Rutgers to Franklin Lakes that night. I got home at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and one of you came in and said, "Do you know what happened? What's going on?" And I, was so exhausted from, working most of the night, and it was just crazy. And trying to explain, I think the kids, I don't know if they really, I think my 15-year-old has a grasp a little bit. It's very hard for them to understand the magnitude of it all. And then, of course, I said to them, that was November. Then it was January, and now we have a new president, and that was the biggest story of our time. And I was like, it was the biggest story. And I said, do you know what happened next? And they couldn't place the timing. And I was like, and my husband and I were like, and then it was September 11th. It's will always for me be impactful, because I had started my first journalism job, first real job after graduate school.
Where were you working?
At that time, on 9/11, I was working for, I got a job in Charlotte, North Carolina at WFAE, which is the public radio affiliate. And I was 25, and it was a dream job. I was an anchor and reporter. And, I left New York City on August 31st. I started work September 5th, and then...
It was my first week of law school. So speaking of Larsons.
I said we're like similar ages.
Yeah, so it was my first week of law school. And my criminal law professor was Alan Dershowitz.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of him. I'm kidding, obviously.
So, yes, but we were talking, and it was, the whole conversation turned to torture, right? I mean, that's what we discussed for months in law school, right? As you might imagine, because that was the topic du jour, in criminal law particularly. And there was a constitutional piece to it, but yes, it was really a very interesting time to be debating these topics in law school.
And that was your first year, too?
My first year.
Wow.
So my first week, or whatever, second week of law school.
Yeah. So since you mentioned the word torture, I'm going to segue. I mean, it's kind of an unpleasant segue, but I think we're going to talk about a little bit about Israel, which is every day more complex, confusing, and truly sad. I wanted to ask you about your opinion of the UN resolution.
Sure. So I've said this publicly, I disagreed with the resolution, particularly because it did not tie the release of the hostages to any mention of a pause, right?
Right.
So, and to me, listen, I think one thing that seems to not get enough attention, I don't know how you all feel about this, but I'm shocked that every day we don't talk about, as a country and as leaders in the country, that Americans are still hostage right now, including Idan Alexander, who's a constituent of mine from Tenafly, New Jersey. I spoke to Mr. Alexander yesterday. The most incredible people of strength that if you spend time with them, you would love them in a minute. And their son went to Tenafly High School. He swam on the swim team, went to the prom. He's just like any other Jersey kid. Then went to serve in the IDF bravely, and then was captured on October 7th. So, you know, first and foremost, I'm shocked that we don't talk about that every day, because I feel like that should be part of the conversation, and I don't understand why it's not. The second thing we don't talk about enough is that 40 plus Americans were killed. I say about 40 because we don't know exactly. And that is a reality that we face. So anything that puts getting the hostages home at risk, and to me is unacceptable. I thought the resolution did that. And unsurprisingly, Hamas walked away from the table, negotiating table. And they were, my understanding is, incredibly close. And it's heartbreaking, right? We have to get the hostages home, not just American hostages, but all hostages home. We must sufficiently diminish Hamas, and of course, and as I've said from the beginning of this war, we must get humanitarian aid to innocent civilians in Gaza, right? I mean, their objectives to me are clear, and anything that puts those objectives at risk is something that I'm deeply concerned about. And by the way, I'm on the Intelligence Committee. I'm the only Jewish member of the Intelligence Committee, and I focus a lot on the Middle East and have since before October 7th. And so I have pretty strong feelings about all these things.
What about, the U.S. Involvement? I mean, do you think we should be dictating foreign policy to Israel?
Well, I mean, I think they are a key ally of ours. I think they have been a partner, a key democratic partner, and critical to America's national security for many years. I think that's a relationship, just like all of our allies, where we work together. And of course, we should never dictate whether it's an election of one of our key democratic allies, or any. We should not. We work together, and that's the way it should be done. And I think that's best if we work together in private, not going after each other publicly. I think that's never constructive. With a key ally, right? With a key democratic ally.
For many years, I was a volunteer, and I still consider myself a volunteer, but with Moms Demand Action. You're welcome. I started with another, actually, probably someone you may have gone to high school with. We started the Essex County chapter, and it's flourished. And when we talk about hostages and the idea that it's just become normal that they're hostages, it makes me think a lot about gun violence in this country and this idea that it's just another shooting. And it's, you know, I think for many people, it's unacceptable. And I think, you know, while we live in a state with some of the best laws for gun violence prevention, it's just still not enough. It's just not enough.
You never want to become desensitized, right?
Right.
And I think, you know, every loss to gun violence has a face and a family and loved ones and friends and
We just lost a mother at my elementary school. A mother of 2 children was shot by her partner in Bergen County. You may have read about it in the news.
I mean, it happened. It's so painful, and people, you hear about these things, and especially you look at numbers here, you look at numbers in urban areas every day. You see these statistics, and listen, these shootings happen every day.
Every day.
Every day, and they get attention if they hit a certain threshold.
Right.
And so you take that back to the pain of what's going on in Israel and in Gaza and the hostages. You know, we can't lose sight of a couple things, which I think I fear people are losing sight of the fact
Right.
that on October 7th, Hamas, a terrorist organization as designated by the United States of America, who, by the way, hates us as probably more than they hate Israel, an Iranian proxy, attacked Israel, brutally raped, burned alive, decapitated, ripped babies out of wombs, put babies in ovens. I've seen footage. If you have not seen some of this footage, it's something you can't unsee. I was in Israel in December, spending time with the head of Mossad and Shin Bet. I saw more footage, worse, footage of
Footage you can't unsee.
footage you cannot unsee. And that happened. And they took hostages. And the hostages are there, right? And we know that we know, despite the fact that it took 50 days for UN Women to say anything, we know that they gang raped these women. We know that I spoke to Israeli officials about, they cut her breasts off, shot a nail gun up her private parts. She begged as they gang raped her. She begged for them to kill her, and they shot her in the head, right? At a peace festival, right? So that was, if you're in Israel, the pain and the fear. And then if we remember, Hamas immediately came out and said they will do it a second, third, or fourth time until the Jews are gone, right? Until Israel is gone, river to the sea. There's no confusion about what river to the sea means. And in case anybody tries to tell you it has some other different meaning. It's not a call, there's no aspirational call for what river to the sea means. It's very clear what river to the sea means. So to me, you still have hostages, we still have Hamas still firing rockets into Israel, right? It's still happening, right? And so the responsibility, so I just, the pain, the daily pain continues. And of course, at the same time, I believe deeply, as I'm sure all of you do, that everything must be done to deliver humanitarian aid, everything. And even if Hamas is stealing 3/4 of it every day, which there's a lot of evidence to show that they are disrupting, right? Not only do they use innocent Palestinian civilians as human shields and push them into harm's way, and as they said publicly, as Hamas has said publicly, innocent Palestinians are not our problem, right? They're the UN's problem. We're focused on the 25% who are Hamas, right? Even if that's the case, and even if they keep stealing humanitarian aid, everything must be done to get as much humanitarian aid every single day into the region. I believe that deeply, and more must be done. But the facts are the facts of the reality of what happened that day and what's happened since. It's not, they haven't pulled back and said, okay, we're done. This is continuing to go on.
We can talk about another humanitarian crisis that's facing our country, which is immigration. And I don't know how we're going to fix this problem, but it's kind of a mess. And I'm wondering what you think, we can do. Some people suggest closing the borders. Other people think that's a terrible idea. But I think we're really at a point where we have to figure out how we're going to handle the influx of immigrants. Any thoughts there?
That's a big question that could go
It
on
is a
for
big
could go on
question.
for a half hour. I'll say that there are a few clear facts, right? There's about, depending upon the week, 8 to 10,000 people a day crossing versus 1,000 during the Obama years, and the influx is overwhelming to the system, right? To those who need to process asylum claims, those who need to law enforcement, the border,
And
to safety.
locally, like the food pantries I know have been affected.
Sure. So then, of course, people coming in, and then it's affecting all different places in the country. And as I said to somebody this morning, we're a nation of immigrants, and and including, I assume, most people in this room, if we trace it back, and having a clear process is also really important, right? And also, people are not rushing to go into China or to Russia or to Iran, right? They're not knocking on their door trying to go in there. They're trying to come here to the greatest country the world's ever known, right? And so I think about that a lot, right? I mean, there's a lot of things to balance here, but security, of course, and having strong border security, both in the south and the north, by the way, northern border, is critically important. And as someone who's worked on this issue now for years, and like many people who've worked on this issue, been incredibly frustrated because we know what the answers on the question is: do people have the courage to actually do the right thing? So I was very involved in the deal that was almost happened a few weeks ago, being run by Chris Murphy out of the Senate with James Langford, and Kirsten Sinema was involved. There was a whole group, and as you know, they had a deal which included the humanitarian aid, military aid for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and then, of course, had border security in the package. The White House, the president, supported it. The Senator Schumer supported it. McConnell supported it, and then it couldn't get. And then former President Trump came out against it, and the House refused to take it up. And the deal was done. Like, the deal was, I worked for months and months and months. I was involved a little bit, and that's what happened. And it's incredibly frustrating because, it was and none of these bills are perfect, but the bottom line is there was bipartisan agreement to solve many problems at the same time, because that's how you do these things. You have to, unfortunately, to get things through in a divided government, you have to figure out a way where you can get to 80% agreement to get it done.
Well, you're part of the problem-solving caucus.
Solvers Caucus. Yes.
Wait, I said it wrong? Sorry. So I would expect that you are someone who wants to take a project, an idea, and then, get it done. I mean, you just said that it was incredibly frustrating, and you've got to imagine how, your constituents feel too. I mean, I feel like a lot of people in America are at times frustrated, overwhelmed, disappointed that we can't seem to, complete tasks, I guess, in the most basic way. I mean, so many things have been finished, so many laws have been passed, and then so many things are just like floating out there.
Yeah, I mean, I say this though. Okay, so I'm an optimistic person. So let's talk about the good news is, since President Biden's in office, there's been an enormous amount of legislative accomplishment, working in a bipartisan way. The bipartisan infrastructure bill, which I was very happy to help write and negotiate and pass, and the Problem Solvers Caucus helped get that done. We had 12 Republicans who came out and backed it when some members of our party wouldn't support it. And that does everything from the Gateway train tunnel to fixing roads, bridges, rail, water infrastructure.
What's the latest on the tunnel?
It's underway. I mean, there's phases of it, right? You got to figure. There's a bridge that goes to a tunnel, and so they're working on parts of it, and it's been fun. We have the funding now, and we're rocking and rolling. So that's what's going on. I mean, listen, this takes many years to build.
I know I'm asking because, I know yesterday, you're not a big fan of congestion pricing.
The congestion tax, if you mean. Well, we can talk about that next.
Okay, we'll talk about that next.
But if you want, no problem. I have very strong feelings about that.
I know.
What, so I was saying we got the PACT Act done to support veterans who were exposed to burn pits. We got bipartisan. I was very proud to work on. We got the Electoral Reform Act done, which said that a vice president can't stop certifying an election. Which, by the way, Susan Collins and I worked on together. I led it in the House. People don't even know it got done. It's the same thing that happened in the last election, where you remember the mess that led to January 6th. That the process can't be overruled the way it was anymore. We passed legislation now to change that, which I think is great. No one even realizes it got done, right? Because it was kind of at the end of the year, we got it done. We got done common sense gun legislation, right? Was it everything? No, absolutely not. We have more to do, but the fact is we got it done, bipartisan gun legislation. So we did the CHIPS Act to build semiconductors in the United States. All bipartisan bills, all accomplished under this administration, all done in a bipartisan way, working together. I say that, the American Rescue Plan, another significant piece of legislation, including, and others, right? So, Inflation Reduction Act, huge accomplishment, great for the environment, for alternative energy, will encourage, really help us move to a next generation on energy. All great things we did together. This Congress, very frustrating, right? Very, very frustrating. You've got starting next week or a couple weeks, we'll have a one-seat majority. The Republicans will have a one-seat majority. We'll have a one-seat House, right? And the Republicans are really at each other. Like, really, you have Republicans who are retiring from Congress. Normally, we retire, you could be 30 and finish in Congress, you say you're retiring. They're retiring, and then they're leaving before the end of Congress. They just say, I'm out of here next week. They drop the mic and they leave. That is totally unusual, right? That is not customary, unless, God forbid, you're sick or something happens to your family. But normally, you say, that's it, we'll leave next, I'll serve out my term. There's so much division on the Republican side, it's actually causing major problems in us legislating. I was very involved in the debt ceiling deal to get done, keeping the government open a few times, the problem solvers. But those are things that are just kind of perfunctory, right? They're having a really hard time this Congress. So these things go up and down, but the key is you never give up, right? You just kind of have to keep going and working on it. We're working on something now to try again to make sure we get something done on this humanitarian aid and military aid for these areas, and for Ukraine and for Israel, and getting humanitarian aid in Taiwan, right? We're back to work at that. I was on a call pulling in tonight, right? You have to just keep going, and that's the key.
I mean, I was reading a lot about some of the things that you have been working on with the caucus, and I know talking about improving childcare access for working parents. Huge deal.
Huge issue. Yeah.
Huge.
Affordability.
And the other thing I mentioned briefly before, so the name of the act is called the Search Act, right? And I happened to get your email, in my inbox. This act.
I hope you didn't unsubscribe.
No. I'm going to try to explain it, but it provides funding for research for women's health. Women's health, right?
Rare
And
diseases.
Rare diseases.
Yeah.
And, it's extremely important, and particularly in this climate where I think women feel like they're under attack. And it's scary. And I think, on many levels, like I said, I saw the pictures of you at Cooperman Barnabas, and then I saw the pictures of you at Valley Hospital, where you were promoting or supporting women's right and
IVF.
families' right to have IVF,
Yes.
which, interesting fact, I don't know if you know this, but there's a doctor at Valley Hospital who is the grandson of the man who invented IVF. I didn't know that. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. He,
So to your point that you're bringing up, I assume is if you look at the expanse of women's health care in general so there's two buckets here. I think
Right.
There's affordability and
accessibility.
of both healthcare, of childcare, of being able to afford childcare so that you can work if you want to or if you have to, and whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, the bottom line is childcare shouldn't be an impediment, and because of the affordability side of it.
Right, and that's definitely one side of it. And then the other side is, getting people to pay attention to women's health and women's health issues. And, what can happen often is that you want to make an appointment with a physician and there's a 6-month wait. Or you miss an appointment and you're told, well, you need to call back in 9 months.
Huge issue.
Huge.
Yes, and so I'll put that on the affordability, accessibility side of healthcare, and which is, as you know, such a significant issue in society, and especially if you're from a harder pressed community, especially.
I was going to say, if you don't have the resources.
If you don't have the resources. If you have the resources, it's tough.
Right.
It can be nearly impossible if you don't have the resources. Mm-hmm. And that shouldn't be in the greatest country in the world. And you talk about, we did this thing, I have legislation to deal with rare diseases, which particularly affect women, and there's not nearly enough A, funding, and B, clinical trials.
Yes.
So it's stopping the research. I do a lot on rare diseases. My mom, of blessed memory, passed from a rare disease. So, I've learned so much and focused so much on rare diseases because, discovery of a rare disease often leads to another discovery of it may not be a rare disease. Like some of the things when we were doing research on rare diseases led to solving COVID, on the vaccine for COVID. And we're not doing enough, and it really drives me crazy. And women's issues that particularly affect women are often the ones that are not getting the attention they deserve and demand and need. And so it's a huge, put aside the cost of healthcare, which is a problem, accessibility of healthcare is a problem, and then just what we're doing on actually addressing certain types of healthcare crises.
Yeah, and it trickles down too. I'm a woman, and I'm mentioning, women's health, particularly because I was reading about the Search Act, but it isn't just about women. It's, we're seeing pediatricians retire locally, and there's been a huge thread online about parents who were like, I don't know what to do anymore because my doctor's gone and I can't get in. I can't get in.
The can't get in problem is a very big problem of all kinds of doctors, right? Can't get in, right?
Particularly if you have a child who has significant health issues. But I'm glad that we could talk about the Search Act, and particularly, as I said, because of everything that's gone on with abortion and abortion rights.
We didn't talk about, right, obviously IVF being a key part of that, but look at what the court on mifepristone
I was listening
on the Supreme Court just this week, right? Just this week.
Yes, I actually listened to the hearings because one of my college classmates was arguing for the Supreme Court.
Really?
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was.
The fight here on these issues, there are places in New Jersey, and I'm getting a lot of feedback. Feedback is my nicest way of saying constructive comments from constituents who are upset because there are centers that are there's more than 50 of them in New Jersey that they call pregnancy centers, and they do not, as an option, bring up or refer for choice, like for a woman to make her decision on what she wants to do. They don't present that. So you go into thinking they're called pregnancy crisis centers. You go in thinking you're going to have medical care. They present themselves in many of these cases. They present themselves as such, and actually you go in and they do not give you any option except one. And even in cases of rape, incest, and the health of the mother, ectopic pregnancies, they will not refer. And listen, and that's in New Jersey, where, by the way, we have great laws on the books, thank God, despite what the court did. But look what's happening in the country, in all these states, where the court did not say rape, incest, life of the mother as an issue where you can't provide medical care, proper medical care, right, on a choice. They didn't say that, and they didn't say no reproductive freedom in cases of rape. But these states, what they're doing is reading because they're scared of their liability. They're going much further. They're not teaching their doctors and their medical students right about actually how to provide this kind of care. And it is scary because of the potential dangers of health for women. And yeah.
Right. A friend of mine who's an ER doctor was just writing about that and saying how fearful she is. The line between being an emergency room physician and whether or not you're going to treat a patient. That's a longer discussion. I know our rabbi wants to jump in. Can I ask just one more brief thing?
We didn't do congestion tax.
I know.
I can't believe it.
Can I ask? Well, the reason, there's a couple reasons I wanted to ask you the question, but you also are someone who picked up on the fact that New Jersey is like the worst state in the country for pedestrian safety. You should follow him on X or any of the...
Still Twitter, I refuse to call it X.
Okay, on Twitter. And we've had a really, really bad stretch in Montclair and other surrounding towns. It's just terrible. And people, PS, seem like they're crazy on the roads, but I understand wanting to support pedestrian safety, and I think it's important. I don't know why then you wouldn't, also want to reduce the number of cars on the road. Or maybe I'm missing, because I know.
Who said I'm against that?
Well, tell us what your opposition.
Remember, I helped write the infrastructure bill. There's tons of resources for mass transit, for New Jersey mass transit, part of the money we announced there was from the infrastructure bill for sidewalk safety and community safety. But those are apples and oranges from what the congestion tax is, right? So yes, pedestrian safety here and in our cities, but that's not what the issue is. I'm also a huge supporter of helping hardworking families make sure they can afford to work, whether you're a nurse going in to Sloan Kettering, whether you are an electrician, whether you're an Uber driver, whether you're a cop or a firefighter. The bottom line is, for those of you who haven't followed this closely, New York, so you go over the GW Bridge, it's about $17, depending on time of day, and whether you have an easy pass, don't have an easy pass, or the tunnels, same situation, I guess you'd be more the tunnel crowd here, and one of the tunnels. So
we do both.
You do both. You go over the GW Bridge, $17. Now New York says we want to charge $15 more to go south of 60th Street. Even if, by the way, you have no mass transit option, like unfortunately a lot of people in Bergen County. I know here you have one-seat rides, which is great. A lot of places in our state have no rides into the city. The bus, post-COVID, the buses have been, the bus service gutted. Very few options in a lot of places on buses, if any options at all. In lots of parts of Bergen County, Sussex County, Passaic County, lots of places where there's not a lot of mass transit options, you have to drive. And it's certain depending on time of day. So you're driving, you're now spending they're whacking you $15. On days where they want to, they can charge 25% more in surge pricing days. And they gave themselves the right yesterday to raise it by 10%, the toll, this congestion tax, the first year. Okay, so now you're talking about at least $4,000 a year post-taxes. That's about $7,000 before taxes. You're a nurse, you make a median income in New York of $70,000. You just took $7,000 away from there. Okay, we're at 63. Another $5,000 for the toll normally. What are you at, 57, 58? Then, by the way, you gotta pay for parking, you gotta pay for gas. Oh, and you gotta live in New Jersey and afford to live in New Jersey. It is, and what's crazier than all of this that I've said so far is that the MTA admits in their own report to us in the federal government that it will lead to more cancer-causing pollution in northern New Jersey, more truck traffic at the GW Bridge, more car traffic at the Hana Lincoln, back up, the truck traffic, formaldehyde and other cancer-causing pollutions, right, in northern New Jersey, outer boroughs. It's gonna affect our children, our families. Oh, and by the way, they admit also that it's gonna lead to more traffic. So this genius idea of more congestion pricing just says, listen, if you live south of 60th Street in New York, your day might get better. If you live south of 60th Street, great for you. Totally screws us. Not a nickel of the money New York's making will go to help any of our families here in New Jersey, any of the people we represent and care about. And it hurts the people in the outer boroughs, harder pressed families who live in the outer boroughs, because listen, you live south of 60th Street, you got a few dimes in your pocket. You live in the outer boroughs, you don't. And so it is, and they admit they just need the cash. They admit that, they come clean. They're like, listen, we run the worst mass transit system in America. It lost $700 million last year to fare skippers alone. $700 million bucks, so people didn't pay. Oh, and we blew $1 billion by accidentally building one of the 2nd Avenue subway stops too big. We made it too big, we screwed up, $1 billion. Oops. And we're gonna give $600 million to the Buffalo Bills to build a new stadium. The billionaires who own the Buffalo Bills, we're gonna give them a $600 million bucks to build a new stadium, right? Instead of actually investing in mass transit. My point is—
You can come up now.
My point is, it totally screws our families.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot.
But otherwise,
Sorry.
I'm happy to debate it.
All right. So I get called up for the Jewy stuff. So,
You don't want to do congestion.
yeah.
We just would like to be able to get from point A, from Montclair into the city in under 90 minutes, but okay.
So we talked about Israel, but let's talk anti-Semitism right now.
Do you want me to move?
No, stay. Well, all three of us will have the conversation.
This is the tallest I've ever felt. This is big for me.
Yeah. I'm curious, what's to be done? I mean, this is something that I wrestle with every day. I must have multiple conversations a day about rising rates of anti-Semitism, locally, nationally. What are you thinking?
I mean, I think, like probably most of us feel, and you feel this probably more than anyone because of what this shul went through, which was last January, right? That we know the numbers are at all-time highs. We know that if you go to a college campus now, in many cases, including at Rutgers, which is one of the largest Jewish populations in the country of a campus, we know that you may not feel that welcome in some classrooms and outside a Hillel or outside the AUPI house or in a lot of parts of campus. You're wearing a kippah. You're certainly, you may have stopped wearing your kippah in a lot of cases because of how you are treated. And it's in every corner. And by the way, I feel probably like I hope all of you do, that hate in any which way, whether it's Islamophobia, whether it's anti-Semitism, is completely unacceptable, and there's no place for it here in our society or anywhere around the world. But the reality is, 3 days into the conflict, 4 or 5 days into the conflict, there was a bombing of that tragic bombing of not a hospital, but the parking lot next to the hospital. Within 8 seconds, everybody blamed the Jews, right? Immediately, right? They said it was a bomb the hospital, the 500 were dead. The facts, of course, quickly came out that were really never corrected on Al Jazeera and lots of places, or even in our own publications, that it was 50, too many. It was Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and it was the parking garage next to it. The point is, we're seeing it, the disinformation. I was one of the co-authors of the legislation, original co-authors that on TikTok, the massive amount of disinformation being pumped out about Jews, frankly about our country writ large, especially to young people under 30. It's their number one news source is TikTok if you're under 30. The amount of information being pumped out right now, disinformation, What do I think? I think it's a very scary time, and we have a lot of work to do, whether that's nonprofit security grants to protect a synagogue or a church or a mosque, or education, because we have a lot of work to do there.
So the class that I usually teach at Montclair State is a class in media ethics, and we have spent a huge part of the class talking about misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda. And I also teach a journalism class to elementary students at one of the schools in Montclair, and I decided to see if I could teach that to them too. They get it. They're highly knowledgeable. And they're learning to identify, they're learning to look for sourcing, but there's a lot of people that don't, and you're right, it's a big problem. In fact, I played the telephone game with them. You remember that old game where you whisper in someone's ear? Oh, yeah. To show them what happens when information, is spread. They were laughing, but it's a really good example of how information spreads so quickly.
I mean, so if you go to my Facebook page, which I don't recommend you do, and look at the comments, or X, right? It's, you represent the United States, not Israel. What country do you work for? You Zionist pig, like the litany of anti-Semitic, pick your anti-Semitic slur is on there. And there was some analysis done. There's some outside groups that are doing analysis. 72% of the comments on my social media are bot-driven, right? I was pretty shocked by that, right? So there's so much and that just tells you the amount of disinformation coming in. Listen, our enemies, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, who are working very closely together, have a goal, right? Iran, whose proxies are attacking the United States of America regularly now, right? Out of Syria, Iraq, of course, the Houthis right now in the Red Sea, attacking America and our allies. We don't talk about that enough, but these are all Iranian-backed proxies, right? Boko Haram, Hezbollah, obviously Hamas, right? The coordinated effort here of disinformation is significant. Our enemies, and I think this is, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I think this is very important. Our enemies, they want one thing. They want to tear each other apart, right? That is their goal.
It's their playbook.
It's their playbook, right? Like, we live in the greatest country, and I keep saying that because I think it's really important. It's why I'm so honored to be in my job and believe so deeply that we all have a huge responsibility here. If we attack one another and tear each other apart and divide up, they win. That's what they want, right? If we don't put country first and over party and remember we're all Americans, and we may disagree on some things, but we agree on 99% of things, right? But they want to focus on the things we disagree on and tear us apart because that is their playbook. That is how they win, right? And it drives up hate and anti-Semitism. Like, they want to drive all that up because it drives us further apart. And if you watch cable news, with all respect on the journalism side, like, listen, cable news and social media have a goal. They want to sell ads and get clicks. That's their job, right? They want to, the more incendiary, the better, right? They don't like to talk about problem solving, bipartisan problem solving, right? It's a yawn fest for them, right? They want the fight. That's what they want to focus on because that's what drives people to watch, unfortunately.
I'm curious, actually. There is going to be a fight in New Jersey, and you may not want to comment on this, and if you don't, that's totally fine. But there's a movement among a lot of states to pass the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is it's the definition put forward by, most of the major Jewish scholars out there. And basically, for me at least, as a leader, when I read it, I actually completely agree with it. It's a very kind of broad statement about what anti-Semitism is.
I've long supported it.
And then it's a lot of different examples, right, of what anti-Semitism could be, holding Israel to a different standard than others, denying Jews the right for self-existence, like all of that. However, it has been used as a cudgel, and what it is in a vacuum is very different than how some people use it, and it's become like the wedge between the Jewish community and the Muslim American community often. There was a big fight about it in Clifton last summer. I'm curious, like, is defining anti-Semitism worth it?
Yes. I mean, I think, listen, if people want to find a wedge, they find a wedge. And so I think most of those things are excuses for finding wedges. And that's kind of the bigger challenge I think we're facing. If people and this moment in time and history is being used on many fronts to say, like, this is a great moment to drive wedges, to show disagreement, for hate to rise, right? For people to battle each other. And that's one of the things that I'm sure a lot of people have told you, God, I feel so alone right now. I thought that this person shared my views or was with me, or that this group, my thing's echoing here. You okay? Hello? Is that better? I feel like this group, they'll say, I feel like this group was with me. I was very supportive of this group, and they're not with me anymore. And because of that, I think a lot of people are more driven apart now than in a long time. And I'm not sure if it's because of a definition, because most people probably don't know there's a battle over definition. I think it's about something much bigger that's going on. And that's what I think it is.
I think that wedge is not just about Judaism. I mean, we're talking about that right now, but I feel like we see that with regards to gender identity and many other issues.
Yeah, how about our democracy? Right? I mean, let's be honest, our democracy, and again, I apologize if there's people here who disagree with me on this, but our democracy is on the line in November, in my opinion, right? Like, I was in the room on January 6th, right? I was there. Like, there wasn't a tour. That was a threat to our people attacking our very democracy and who we are as a country and what we believe in as a people, as a democracy. And so, yeah, there are a lot of divisions in our country, but I think people really are focused on the divisions, and there's a reason why, because it's, again, there are those who want to drive us further apart. And so they push out disinformation, they focus on narrow communities where they pump certain information to drive wedges.
I mean, one of my challenges as a leader is when to know when to fight and when to know when to just say, you know what, it's not worth the fight. And there's so many things that are wedge issues that you can't fight everything. And so I struggle with that personally. And I'm curious how you negotiate that. I'm going to turn the mics down as you do that.
I think you... It's okay. Okay, I was getting a lot of feedback. And I think you're right, you can't fight every fight, but there are plenty of fights that you have to fight and you can't walk away from. And if everybody refuses to fight these fights, then we will let certain things become accepted. I mean, if you think about what's acceptable language on the anti-Semitism front, frankly, the things people, a few years ago, people said, when we were talking about all about those Benjamins or the hypnotic trance on the world that Jews have, right? Like, that was a 10. Now that's, you say it enough, it's a 5, right? You can call people, so instead of calling me a Jew now, you call me a Zionist, a dirty Zionist, right? Instead of, right? And the bar moves. We can't let it, Rabbi, like my feeling is you can't, you've got to speak up, you've got to speak out. Now some people say, well, why are you speaking out about that? You just spoke out about that yesterday. I said, well, who else is going to speak out about it? We got to fight these things. You can't just let them sit, right? You've got to make sure you correct the record, right? So if I'm speaking out about Rutgers, they said, well, you spoke out about that incident last week. I said, yes. But Rutgers right now is voting on 2 BDS resolutions, their student body. 2 BDS resolutions, right? By the way, BDS is illegal in the state of New Jersey, right? But they're voting on 2 BDS resolutions at Rutgers. So do you say nothing? Or do you say something, right? When a university does something you disagree with, you speak out. My wife keeps saying to me, well, if you keep doing this, like, we'll have nowhere to send our kids. I said, yes, but if we don't speak out against when you see these things, and I'd expect the same if there's a lot of Islamophobia, I should speak out. Like, you have to say something. It's our responsibility. You got to fight. And when you see something that you believe in, if it's something we believe strongly in, you got to fight and do the right thing.
No, I just wanted to add that when you mentioned briefly before about the pushing of disinformation and misinformation, that none of that's new. I mean, this has been going on for years and years. The difference, of course, is now the presence of social media. And I think it's very scary. So I have one question left. Final question. Lightning round. No, just kidding. Coffee or tea? No, I'm kidding. You have coffee. Who do you think is going to be in the Final Four?
I have 4 brackets.
See, I was going to ask you about your bracket, but
I'm not sharing my Final Four because I think it's looking rough. I have 1 bracket with 4 left.
okay.
Like
All right.
4 potential ones.
I mean, what
that
about the
left.
Elite Eight?
I've lost some people along the way here that I've made some bad bets along the way. But because the bracket thing is a big strategy, a big game theory strategy, and part of it is you go for the people who are the higher ranks, right? Or do you go for a lot of underdogs? I like a good fair number of underdogs.
Seton Hall. I teach there.
Right.
They're doing very well.
Fair enough underdogs. I went big on some of the underdogs this year, and I was definitely I missed. But sometimes it works.
My 3-year-old daughter had UAB going all the way.
Really?
Yeah, I gave her choices, and she made a whole bracket up. She sat for the whole thing.
I love that.
She lost in the first round.
Yeah. Owen's out.
Yes.
He got knocked out.
So I want to just say thank yous. So thank you to Jamie Bedrin. Thank you to Representative Gottheimer. We're blessed to have you join our congregation for the evening and for the second night in what is probably about a year at this point that you are with us. If you're inspired by what you've seen, check out Representative Gottheimer's X page or Twitter page, whatever he calls it. You can follow him on social media. Also, subscribe to his emails. Thank you for working tirelessly, not just for our country, but really as a representative of the Jewish people in Congress. And I know it has not been an easy time to be a Jew worldwide. It's not been an easy time to be a Jew in this country. And I imagine it has not been an easy time to be a Jew in the halls of Washington. And so thank you for carrying that on your shoulders.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Well, thank you both. I'm very grateful. Thank you all for showing up tonight, and it means a lot. I know you're all very busy. I know there's March Madness going on. So really, seriously, thank you. Thank you for you all have had a tough year and a half or so here, and for me, it was very important, not just to come here once, but to come back. And the point is, I think, a bigger one, which no matter what they throw at you, you keep going and get stronger. And I think that is the big lesson, both in this shul and I believe for Jews around the world. And that's what we have to not forget, as well as for our country.
So are you running out, or people could say hi to you if they want?
People can say hi.
Yes.
I do have to get my little guy wants me home to watch a little basketball tonight before bed. So I will say hi quickly, and then I'm going to rush home to see if I can win any of those brackets. Well, thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you to Carrie. Thank you to Shirley. Thank you to Josh Weston for the first introduction.
Thank you, Josh, by the way.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Thank you to Josh Katz,
who was a real leader.
Who did all our security tonight.
Thank you, Josh.